Hello, friends. I had a beautiful conversation this morning with a friend and student and also thought partner. And we were just we were talking about some of the stuff that I have also been talking about on this post for a couple of days now, with regard to listening to that voice inside of us, that voice inside of me, and really getting sort of serious about what really matters and what, what's more important and what's less important. And especially, as I was saying yesterday and I think the day before, what are the decisions that we make that really allow our genius to speak to us? How do we make choices that align with that part of ourselves so that that channel can open up, as opposed to making choices that keep that channel closed, which is, very, very often what we've become habituated to doing, just holding on to things because they give us a sense of security or because they hold out the promise of some sort of success or whatever in the future. So, we were just talking this morning about what it really feels like to let some of that go and to kind of believe and really trust that the decisions that open the door are that really works. That actually, it's not just like a self-help technique. It actually really works. It really does effectively realign our lives with the energy force that ultimately is driving our lives, and that brings us into ever closer alignment with why we're here, what our purpose is. And so anyway, we were talking amongst ourselves about the various ways that's manifesting in our life. And what struck me, a new insight that I had never articulated this way before, struck me, which is that listening to that voice, that still small voice, listening to that voice is really the ultimate expression of self-love. And because I think self-love gets kind of invoked a lot as a thing that we all should be doing more of. We all should be loving ourselves more. We all should be, caring for ourselves more, giving ourselves more love. And I think sometimes how that is defined kind of remains unclear in all of the enthusiasm for it and the very, I would say, well-placed emphasis we're putting on it. We don't always define it, because self-love is not, to me, is not simply giving ourselves permission to indulge in whatever we want, or, it's not, it's not a kind of coddling of the ego, telling ourselves it's okay, it's not that we don't need to be given an environment and be creating an environment for ourselves where kind of everything's okay and we're able to hold a gentle space for ourselves, but there's a difference between kind of indulging our desires and giving ourselves deep self-love. And what came through this morning in this conversation, just as an insight to me, was, oh wow, that really feels like a really accurate definition of what self-love is. Because basically what we're saying there is self-love is honoring the part of ourselves that is delicate, that is vulnerable, that is, it's a voice that it's like both the most powerful voice in our lives. It's both the fundamental core of who we are, and oftentimes it's the voice that we feel or we hear telling us why we're here on this planet. And also, it's a voice that can very, very easily be drowned out by external stimuli, by other voices, by just mind chatter. It can be drowned out by our own mind. We can be drowned out by environments we put ourselves in, and then become stimulated by, and sort of lose the connection to. And all this is all stuff that was coming up as part of my process recently of kind of evaluating all that. Like, how am I selecting the environments that I'm in? How am I engaging in those environments? Where am I coming, where am I allowing myself to come from in every moment and in every circumstance? And when is that really in alignment with this deep inner knowing, and when is it not? When am I allowing myself to still kind of hold on to something for security, or for some sort of promise that it holds out, or something that's not necessarily honoring my deepest impulses, but that for whatever reason has emerged as something that I'm attached to for usually security reasons or whatever. And so this is a very real decision that we make. It's a very real set of decisions that we make, how to really honor that voice. And it just occurred to me that that inner voice, that still small voice, it requires the same care that we would give a child. A child that can't yet fend for itself. It needs our nurturing. It needs our care. It needs to be embraced and supported and encouraged and sometimes defended. It needs the care of a child. And in a lot of ways, that inner voice may very well be linked to our own inner child. It may be a voice that our inner child is very familiar with and is very connected to, but that our older self, our older, more worldly self may not be as connected to. That's not necessarily the case, but I'm just saying that energy, that creative impulse of the vulnerability and the kind of openness and I'm stepping into something I don't know here, but I'm following an instinct, I'm following an intuition, I'm following something that I know feels right on such a deep level. It's very similar to, it's like having a child or a pet. Imagine a dog, or raising a dog or a cat or any animal that we love and care for that needs our support. That insight really zinged for me as well, because it equates, or it binds together, the feeling of self-love, right? Of giving ourselves the love we need, and caring for our inner child, which again is very often, those things they go hand in hand, because there's that inner child part of ourselves that is vulnerable and that does feel soft, or that has, compacted layers of defense on top of itself, so that it doesn't have to feel all the scary things it doesn't used to feel, or whatever, right? So all this is kind of like, I feel like I'm saying the same thing from a number of different angles, but it all amounts to the same thing. And really, it's the insight that came through that felt so profound was, oh wow, self-love. Because the conversation was so focused around this notion of this inner voice, and what kinds of decisions defend and nurture and fortify that voice. Because ultimately, as we know, when we are in vulnerability, when we are in a state of being vulnerable, we're also in a state of being the most powerful, because that's when we have access to all the flow, all the energy, all the resources, all the psychic connection to the cosmos that it makes us genuinely superhuman. But it also it's also a very delicate place. And if we aren't defending it, if we aren't showing up and nurturing it, if we aren't affirming it, if we aren't consistently affirming, this is what I'm about, this is what I care about, this is the real me, this is really my core, these other things are They're baggage I've picked up, but I'm ready to put down. You know, if we're not actively engaging in those decisions, then I would say in a lot of ways we're not giving ourselves self-love, because we're not, you know, we may be doing something that feels good for a little while so that it gives us a break from the stress of carrying all that baggage, but ultimately that's still kind of just we're still on the same cycle. We're not actually dropping any of the baggage. We're not actually moving beyond that. And again, this is not to critique anybody's form or practice of self-love. I think the reason why I found this insight inspiring is because it actually gives me a definition to work with in evaluating what am I doing right now? How am I actually engaging with myself right now? Am I giving that deepest part of myself the attention that it needs? Am I really giving that part of myself the love, the affirmation, the support, the defense? You know, sometimes a kid just needs a parent to go to bat for it because it's too small to know how to, you know, it's just got itself in a situation where it can't defend itself. Sometimes our inner voice needs that. Our inner voice needs us as the parent, as the steward, to say, I know it's not perfect. I know my child is not perfect, but I'm going to defend it. I know my inner voice is not perfect. I know what I'm creating here is not perfect, but I'm defending it. Because if we have to be perfect, then of course that voice will clam up and run away scared. You know, how could it possibly not if it has to be perfect on a first showing or a second showing or a third showing, or, you know, it takes time to evolve. And I think this is where, again, I'm just coming back to this definition of self-love because I find it really helpful in articulating what the practice is of nurturing that deepest part of ourselves and going to bat for that part of ourselves that may need it, you know, that may really need a champion, that may be tentative about coming out and sort of being seen by everyone or out there in the world. Certainly, I think all of our still small voices ultimately are headed for that. We're all ultimately headed for being capable and willing and even enthusiastic about standing on our own 2 feet and saying, this is the core of me, this is the heart of me, this is what I am about. And having no doubt, having no fear, just having total conviction. Because it is the most powerful energy in the universe. I know from my own experience of tapping into that, there's just nothing more powerful. And yet, as we are developing that voice, and even as that voice evolves, you know, it's not like one day it becomes strong and it's like then it's done and it just lives happily ever after. As it, you know, there are layers to it. There's the phases of success, and then the barriers and the challenges to go to kind of leap to the next level. And all these things they're sort of, I mean, at least as far as I can tell, they're sort of the natural laws of consciousness evolution. This is how it works. And showing up for ourselves, showing up for that part of ourselves, and understanding that is self-love, that's one of the deepest and most profound forms of self-love, was really showing up for me today. So, thank you, people. I love you. Thank you for watching. I'm so appreciative of this conversation and of your presence in my life. Mwah. Hope you've all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I'll see you tomorrow.